What's going on YouTube? It's your boy Lucent. You feel me? You feel me? You feel me? You know what I'm saying? So today we got a reaction video. We're gonna be reacting to just the entirety of the Akira Toriyama's legacy, bro. His legacy. Mother Basement has created a documentary. It's been about a month since Akira Toriyama passed away. A moment of silence for him. R.I.P. to Akira Toriyama. If you don't know who Akira Toriyama is, like you can boot it, bro. Creator of Dragon Ball, Sandland, Dr. Slump, Chrono Trigger, like, bro, do your homework, bro. And he made many more other series and influenced an entire genre of art, bro. And anime is an art, bro. And some may call him the grandfather of the anime, bro. And shit, I am very influenced by Dragon Ball Z and everything that that, you feel me, that it represented. And since a young child, bro, remember, nigga, playing games, nigga, acting like I'm doing it, come here, yeah, you feel me, all type of shit, bro. So we gonna pay our respects and just see just the legacy he built. And yeah, look at this documentary. Let's get it. All right, y'all can hear me? We good?
こんなたくさん見えると思ってなかったですね。いや、緊張しますね。照れてた。恥ずかしいですね。
Every artist wishes they could one day make something as impactful as Dragon Ball. Akira Toriyama's martial arts magnum opus defined a genre, influenced several entire generations, and created a truly iconic cast of characters who will endure in popular culture for decades to come. With a style that 4 decades later is still the first thing that comes to mind when most people hear anime.
It's my first, like, kind of like a celebrity death. Well, I used to like Michael Jackson, you know what I'm saying, before he passed away when I was a kid. But like, this is my first, like, actual, like, I feel this shit. You feel me? So I don't know. It was weird, bro. It's weird, bro.
Few artists would have the audacity to even dream of doing that twice, but Toriyama was built different. He didn't dream. He did. Before he even drew his first rough sketches of Son Goku, he was already one of the most successful mangaka in history, thanks to Dr. Slump, an uproarious comedy about a sardonic super robot girl and her dirtbag dad that, alongside Rumiko Takahashi's Urusei Yatsura...
Oh, y'all watch this?
the dominant species of Rumiko Takahashi's Urusei Yatsura.
This shit is fire, bro. This shit is funny as hell, bro. This shit is funny as hell. Classic. If you know, you know.
Redefined what gag manga could be and helped cement their place as the dominant species of shonen manga. A title that Arare's defective descendant Roboko still defends valiantly to this day. Not content to simply reshape a single medium twice, though, Toriyama also helped Yuji Horii invent the JRPG with Dragon Quest just 2 years after launching Dragon Ball, and he's kept quietly working on video games ever since, including one that's considered by many to be the greatest JRPG of all time. In fact, he just got done supervising a very cool-looking open-world adaptation of his manga Sandland that's due out next month. Because even at 68, even with more f*** you money than 50 of me would know what to do with, even as his health was apparently failing behind the scenes, Toriyama still had so much left to give the world.
Right? Before he even made Dragon Ball, which is the greatest, which already is the greatest anime of all time. By greatest, I mean, like, probably not your favorite, probably not the best, like story wise or like philosophy wise or you know what I'm saying, like deep wise, but it is the greatest in terms of influence, other than like Pokemon or some shit. But in terms of influence, but Pokemon has really started off as a game, so you know what I'm saying. But in terms of influence, Dragon Ball is like #1, bro, and it's pretty obvious, bro.
Get artists, few human beings, period, across all of history have made an impact like Akira Toriyama. Looked on as a god among men, even by other gods of...
That makes sense? Wait. I said he was the greatest before he was the greatest. Oh, nah. Yeah, brain fog is cooking me, gang. Brain fog is cooking me.
Manga like the late, great Kazuki Takahashi. You know how you'd probably collapse into a gibbering mess of spaghetti if you ever met the creator of Naruto or One Piece? That's how they felt when they met him. Bro was literally eulogized by the government of China. Not like Chairman Xi made a tweet about how he personally really loved the manga. I mean, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs made an official statement on his passing. They're not the only government either, and this isn't even the first time he's been the subject of international diplomacy. It's almost impossible to overstate what Akira Toriyama's work meant to the worlds of comics, animation, video games, pro wrestling, model kits, hip-hop, Latin American politics, and more. But I'm only barely qualified to talk about those first 3 things, so that's what this video is going to be about. And believe me, that'll give us more than enough to cover. His influence truly reached everywhere. Even this video's sponsor wouldn't be what it is without him. The Promised Neverland is one of those rare Shonen Jump manga that truly broke the mold. A tense, high-stakes, pot-boiler thriller that explodes out into this wild, action-packed adventure before eventually transforming into things I'm pretty sure you won't want spoiled for you, at least not now that the whole story, plus the prequel mini-book We Were Born, is conveniently available in this delectably collectible boxed set. Demizu Pozuka's strikingly sketchy art style has always been blown up. So forgot promised plain detox video, but where do you even begin exploring a legacy as legendary as Akira Toriyama's? Entire genres, entire mediums would not be what they are today if not for his work. Almost every property he ever touched is uniquely and enduringly iconic, and sure, on the global stage, one character stands head and shoulders above the rest, but in his native Japan, everyone knows Arale can beat up Goku, though, and as icons go...
Let's be real, bro. No matter how broken she is, she's not stronger than Goku. Oh my god.
Both of them pale in comparison to the undisputably greatest character design of all time. By drawing just 5 wonky circles and 2 dots, this man single-handedly ensured that no Japanese role-playing enthusiast would ever have to fight anything as boring as a level 1 rat ever again. But of course, it's not that easy, is it? Toriyama just made it look
piece of shit, bro.
Anyone,
I don't
literally
know, bro.
anyone can draw the Dragon Quest slime, but only an absolute genius could have designed it. The elegant drop-like silhouette, the perfectly proportioned features offset just enough to create a sense of depth with the little shine on one side. He basically invented an aesthetically superior smiley face that's just as easy to reproduce as the original, and yet fully copyrightable. Pikachu and Mickey Mouse ain't got shit, and that's just one extremely marketable aspect of a series that literally built a genre and has sold millions with each entry for decades without ever really changing its core design, largely off the back of Toriyama's timeless aesthetic, which has also sold millions upon millions of a lot of other things, come to think of it, and been imitated and iterated on by by even more artists than that around the globe, from countless deviant artists to his fellow Jump mangaka to the most successful character designer in human history, Game Freak's Ken Sugimori. So maybe that's where we should start, with Toriyama's easily imitable art style and the inimitable skill with which he used it.
Hello, let me tell you about my new obsession. AFK Journey. AFK Journey is the first strategic card RPG in the 3D world, powered by one of the
Yes, we got ads, buddy.
Toriyama's work was defined by bold, distinctive, expressive characters built from clean, simple shapes, with sparse, impressionistic backgrounds and well-balanced, high-contrast page layouts that emphasize readability over story density, using varied levels of detail within the
Look
art.
at these panels, bro.
Readability over story density, using
Look at,
bro.
Is that not beautiful right there, bro? Even though it's simple, but it's like, come on, bro.
Levels of
Come on, bro.
detail with
Look at the details, bro. Just a simple page like this, a simple, like, just little ass panel like this, bro. It's just, that shit just, I don't
in
know,
the
bro. It
art,
draws
for
me in,
example,
bro,
placing
for real.
realistic guns and cars next to cartoonier
He got one of
characters
the
to
most
direct and
coolest
reward
art
the
styles of
reader's
all time,
attention,
for sure.
controlling your eyeballs the way a master cinematographer controls a camera.
Facts.
Often, his characters would interact with the panel borders, giving the page a sense of 3D depth, which he'd enhance using bold, eye-catching, sometimes English word art for sound effects and signs. It's very much a graphic designer's approach to making manga, which only makes sense since Toriyama studied design in high school and even worked in advertising for a bit. And while that obviously wasn't his passion, given the eventual career change, graphic design is
Bro,
what gave him
this
his
design for
billion-dollar
Bulma, bro,
edge in the
is just-
weekly
this
battle
shit
for
clean as
manga
hell.
magazine readers' eyeballs.
stealing it.
Most mangaka
My own
of
show.
Toriyama's time were trained in more traditional.
You say you don't give a fuck? You say you don't give a fuck? I'm sorry.
Japanese arts, if they trained at all, that is. Only natural, since manga as we know it today was a newborn medium at that point. Likewise, graphic design as a formalized discipline only reached Japan after the war, around the same time as Machiko Hasegawa and Osamu Tezuka were busy mothering and fathering modern manga. Born in 1955, just 4 years after Astro Boy, Toriyama was among the first generation of Japanese artists to grow up immersed in manga culture with access to a formal education in design. And unlike most of his anime and manga-loving peers, Toriyama made two key choices growing up that set him up for success. Firstly, he found other interests besides anime and manga, chiefly film, both of the giant Japanese monster variety and the Hollywood kind, in particular war films, westerns, and sci-fi. His all-time favorites were reportedly Alien and Galaxy Quest, so yeah, even the man's taste was goated. Because Toriyama's interests moved away from
Hey, yo, Paul.
cartoons as he grew, the things he drew were more varied than most of his 10-year-old contemporaries. While his classmates were learning how to draw Astro Boy better, he was learning how to draw real boys and girls and celebrities he liked and cars and guns and tanks and landscapes and all sorts of other real stuff that made him better at drawing anime and manga too. He was a nerd, but not too much of a nerd. And that directly informed his second great life-changing decision to skip college because school is for nerds. Instead, at 20, he jumped right into the workforce as a professional graphic designer, which taught him two invaluable lessons by the age of 23. First, he learned what does and doesn't work in real-world advertising scenarios, knowledge that would soon make his manga stand out from the crowd. And second, he learned that he absolutely hated working a 9-to-5. Something most of us don't realize until we're too many student loans deep to do anything about it. But Toriyama could quit his job, and so in 1977 he did, and immediately started submitting manga to shonen magazine contests for quick cash. He ended up being disqualified before he could make any, but his ineligible Star Wars parody was nonetheless good enough to catch the eye of
disqualified is crazy.
Shonen Jump editor Kazuhiko Toriyama.
Hold on. We back.
Torishima, who took him under his wing to develop something more original for the magazine. And that thing was, of course, a huge and immediate flop. Wonder Island, Toriyama's first published one-shot, came dead last in Jump's popularity polls, and its sequel didn't fare much better. It took another year for him to find even modest success with cutesy gumshoe Tomato-chan, and comparing the two, it's not hard to see why it shook out that way. Wonder Island is aggressively strange in both its subject matter and style, combining, for the time, avant-garde paneling choices with a barely coherent plot about that one Japanese soldier who didn't know World War II was over for a lot of years, meeting a caveman on that island he was stuck on, and character designs that, well, they have a certain undeniable Toriyama charm,
kind of a cool
but
premise,
if it's
though.
1978 and you have no idea who Akira Toriyama is, they'd probably just look weird and ugly. You say tomato, I say tomato-chan is an 18-year-old gyaru who made police detective because it's a gag manga, don't worry about it, surrounded by even less competent cops who love to goof off and make Godzilla jokes. A solid setup for a situational comedy if I've ever heard one, though, as we'd soon see, Toriyama could do much better. So that's where Sonic got it from. Arale Norimaki is a little girl who...
Sonic, are you a fraud? Are you a fraud, Sonic? Sonic, are you a fraud? He said, shut up. Alright, bro. Alright, bro.
Happens to also be a hyper-advanced robot because her dad is a very lonely inventor and who also has to wear glasses because he's not very good at it. Also, for some reason, Dr. Senbei Norimaki really wants to keep her nature a secret from the rest of Penguin Village, even though the place is just chock full of the weirdest weirdos you've ever met, from talking animals to aliens to definitely not Superman. But then, of course, it is just plain funny when an obvious robot pretends not to be a robot and everyone believes them somehow, and laughs are Dr. Slump's top priority. What's that ordinary teenager doing behind me?
Oh no.
Anyway, the point is, Penguin Village was this limitless comedic playground where pretty much anything could happen, and Toriyama could just run wild with his charmingly scatological, fourth-wall hostile sense of humor, which is still as hysterical in 2024 as it was in 1980. Even as an adult, every chapter of this manga feels like I'm getting away with something. It's just pure joy in illustrated form, and if you're a Dragon Ball fan thinking of finally giving it a shot now, take this as your sign to pull the trigger. Often, when you...
Hello? Alright. What about now? Is it working out? You feel me? Is it working out? Is it working out?
Making stuff like this back then, and I just wouldn't know about it. One of the only English resources I could find listing anime and manga in the chibi style is the TV Tropes page about chibis, and it doesn't even mention Dr. Slump. Neither does this blog I found about the origin of chibis, although it does posit that the style either arose from the Mobile Suit Gundam fandom, which started in 1979 and didn't really take off until the compilation movies hit in 1981, or in some fun little side comics drawn by one of the animators on Crusher Joe, a movie that Toriyama actually did designs for, and also that came out in 1983. So, considering...
This nigga is just the GOAT, bro. This nigga is just the GOAT, bro. The GOAT. Like, what hasn't he done for the community?
Toriyama was drawing chibis at least as far back as 1976.
I thought I would. Oh my fucking god! Y'all pissed me off.
Visualiz.
First start reading them, it can be hard to see why exactly certain smash hit manga took off. Not so with Dr. Slump. The cover image of the manga's irascible mascot hanging off the titular doctor's exasperated face is both eye-catching and an incredible art flex, at once showcasing Toriyama's remarkable ability to draw realistic clothes and facial details, and his very deliberate choice to draw cute little unshaded gremlins instead, blending the two styles together seamlessly. If you know anything about art, this one cover is all you need to see to know this guy's worth following. But even if you don't, the first page will hook you anyway. Using just 17 words, including the mailbox and sound effects, it manages to convey everything we need to know about the main characters and their relationship dynamic in a single brilliant joke. The layout of the page is expertly designed, even by modern standards, with cleverly placed tangents like the mailbox post running into these wires that draw your eye across the panels with exacting precision so the joke always lands. The lack of background detail in most of the shots means that when you stare at the page at a glance, the characters in those panels and the house at the top instantly stand out, while the bottom panel, with all the clutter of the lab in the background, doesn't really read until you focus on it, at which point you realize, hey, that girl don't have a body. It takes a true master of the form to successfully deliver a visual punchline like that without hiding it behind a page turn. But by pulling that magic trick off, Toriyama made one of the most instantly accessible manga ever. By the time you're done scanning the magazine to see what's worth reading, you already know Dr. Slump's core characters, and they've already made you laugh. If you took the first 2 pages of this manga and put them in Jump today, they would still draw readers like flies to a poop. Speaking of poop, you see that poop? The cutesy, swirly-whirly, ice-cream-looking cartoon blob thing? Akira Toriyama popularized drawing poop like that, and was quite possibly the first guy ever to put eyeballs on it. Meaning, the poop emoji itself is a Dr. Slump reference. In the same way that you can't order a sandwich anywhere on Earth without giving the Heinz Corporation at least a little money, you cannot send a text or tweet without being exposed to Akira Toriyama's immense influence. Are you starting to see how deep this rabbit hole goes yet? Sure. Well, we're not done yet. Speaking of brands and rabbits and holes, anime, Dr. Senbei happens to have a favorite RPG, brand of dirty magazine, Playboy. And I don't mean like a McDonald's-style copyright-safe parody. We're talking actual Playboys with the English logo and everything. Officially endorsed by Playboy's Japanese publisher, Shueisha. Fun fact, editor Torishima only ended up working on manga in the first place because he wanted to work for Playboy. So that was actually a very early example of cross-promotional brand synergy. And so, most likely, was the appearance of a Playboy bunny suit in this early gag about the Penguin Village Middle School Gentlemen's Club, which almost certainly led to him drawing Bulma in a bunny suit later on, and that, along with Daikon 4, definitely led to a lot of bunny suit hentai being drawn. Now that's what I
What are you talking about?
Call a cultural impact. Emphasis on the culture. And we're still nowhere near done.
That's fire though, but
Something you've probably noticed about Dr. Slump's art style by this point is its distinctive proportions. You might even recognize them. Chibi, or as it was known back then, super deformed art, is ubiquitous in anime and manga today, often used to punctuate comedic moments, even in more serious stories. And it became so ubiquitous precisely because of Dr. Slump's cute little bobble-headed caricatures of big, scary kaiju and other pop culture icons. It's difficult to say exactly how much.
Wait a second.
credit Toriyama deserves for making Chibis happen, as a lot of very important and influential manga from that time have just never been translated, so there could very well be other artists who were making stuff like this back then, and I just wouldn't know about it. One of the only English resources I could find listing anime and manga in the chibi style is the TV Tropes page about chibis, and it doesn't even mention Dr. Slump. Neither does this blog I found about the origin of chibis, although it does posit that the style either arose from the Mobile Suit Gundam fandom, which started in 1979 and didn't really take off until the compilation movies hit in 1981, or in some fun little side comics drawn by one of the animators on Crusher Joe, a movie that Toriyama actually did designs for, and also that came out in 1983. So, considering Toriyama was drawing chibis at least as far back as 1977, it's safe to say that he was one of, if not the first. But it doesn't really matter who
Chibi style,
did it first,
he originated the
because
chibi style
he
too?
definitely did it biggest and pushed the style into the mainstream, where it would go on to inspire SD Gundam. It's a little hard to fathom from a non-Japanese perspective, which mainly sees it as the other thing Toriyama did, but Dr. Slump was instantly, insanely huge. A little over a year after the manga's debut, there was already an anime on the air, which, for perspective, took 3 years to happen with the similarly influential Urusei Yatsura. And within a year of that premiere, it had the third most watched anime episode in the entire recorded history of television, with almost 37% of Japanese households tuning in. Dr. Slump was more popular in Japan than not voting is in America. It was so popular that Shueisha flat out would not let Akira Toriyama stop making it and move on to something new, like he originally planned to do after just 6 months, unless he pitched something that could be even bigger. So, over the next few years, Toriyama and Torishima got to work doing just that in what little spare time they had between new chapters. Once each Dr. Slump draft was in, they'd stay up late into the night, drinking, smoking, watching classic kung fu movies, and workshopping a story about
My man's smoking a cigar.
goofy little martial arts guy who would take on and eventually triumph over the whole dang world, both in the manga and in real life.
Seven magic balls.
It's all you gotta do to have your wish come true.
Damn, that theme song whips ass. Wish I wasn't 4 years old when they aired it. All kids my age got was
Dragon Ball, friends working together.
You gotta get over this shit. Talking about this all your kids got your age. How old are they?
But
Didn't this shit
honestly,
come
they
in the
could have
80s?
had Nickelback
Oh,
write
no.
the Canadian intro, and I still would have tuned in. Because by the time the OG series hit the English airwaves again, my generation was already Dragon Balls deep in the Android saga. I still remember vividly that momentous day in the summer of '99 when I first met Goku on YTV. Instantly thought he was the coolest dad ever, and shortly thereafter watched him eat a laser beam through the heart and die. It was the coolest fucking thing I'd ever seen in my entire life, and I needed more of it injected directly into my eyeballs every week from then on. Also, I bought all the video games. The decision to split Dragon Ball...
Yeah, Dragon Ball was actually my first game that I played, bro. I think it was like Budokai 1. It was one of those Budokai games, bro. It was my first ever game. My cousins had it on the PS2 and shit. It's my first game I ever played in my life, ever. Yeah, bro. Do your homework.
Z, off from everything pre-time skip for its North American release, was questionable from a narrative integrity standpoint, but from a marketing standpoint, jumping right to the bit where North American kids could see animated murder for quite possibly the first time in their lives was definitely a good call. These moments are burned into the memories of every weeb my age, along with that iconic theme song.
Hey.
Dragon Ball.
Hey.
What, were you expecting Rock the Dragon?
Yes.
Sorry, but the Canadian poverty theme song experience is an integral part of my personal nostalgia.
Hey,
And
that's
of course,
not fire too,
every country remembers it a little different, because Dragon Ball was nothing short of a global sensation. One of the first beachheads by
Rock the
which
Dragon,
anime
that
and
shit's
manga
cute.
truly began their conquest of the international media market, which is one of the biggest economic drivers of the streaming anime era. And that's just the start of its influence. If you only look at the domestic worlds of anime and manga, for as much as Dragon Ball did, Dr. Slump is still, by a wide margin, the more influential series. Oda and Kishimoto both cite it specifically, separate
Are you
from
sure
Dragon
about
Ball, as one of the biggest influences on their own sense of humor, as do quite a lot of other writers, mangaka, and animators, because, like, duh, it had more than double the audience share of The Simpsons, albeit in a country half the size. Of course it was gonna have a massive impact on every Japanese thing that's tried to be funny since. Even some shonen battle tropes you'd probably chalk up to Dragon Ball, like the prevalence of tournament arcs, can actually be traced back to silly gag tournaments from Dr. Slump, which got such a positive response from the audience that Toriyama decided to do them again in his new thing. That's why the first Tenkaichi Budokai is so silly. But at the same time, I can just say
I was
that
just gonna say, or is that just him being himself because he created Dr. Slump? He's not copying. How do you copy something you already created? And he already has that sense of humor because he wrote the shit in the first place. Like, what you mean is Dr. Slump? I mean, I guess, but like at the same time though, it's still the same person writing both series. So who does, like,
Japanese name of that arc without any other context. And most of you know what I'm talking about, because on the global stage, it's no contest. Sure, about as many people watched Dr. Slump in Japan as tuned into The Simpsons in America at its peak in the 90s, but more people tuned into this Chinese 40th anniversary New Year's dance thing than live in America now.
hey, hey, hey,
It's not at all absurd to suggest that Toriyama's contemporary Japanese take on the classic Chinese novel Journey to the West played a major role in healing relations between the two nations, which probably wasn't his intent. One of his greatest charms is he never took himself that seriously, but he and Torishima definitely did design Dragon Ball with broader markets than just Japan in mind. I mean, Goku was clearly inspired by contemporary Chinese heroes like Bruce Lee and Jackie Chan on top of the Monkey King, as well as Superman, who's also a recurring character in Dr. Slump, just by the way. And plenty of Toriyama's other favorite Hollywood things also made their mark on Goku's journey west and beyond. And in turn, when the comic and animation industries of all those countries began taking more and more cues from their counterparts in Japan, Toriyama's notes were some of the first they copied. Although Penguin Village Japan, Toriyama's notes
More of them should have tried copying Android 18, to be honest.
were some of the first they copied.
Yeah.
Although Penguin Village was visually reminiscent of the California coast, because blue skies and palm trees are easy to draw, baby. The general vibe of Dr. Slump remains distinctly Japanese, or at least Japan does America, you know, like Earthbound or Resident Evil. For Dragon Ball, Toriyama sought to give his story more of a globe-trotting international flavor, taking his heroes from the mountains of China to the islands of Okinawa, to the desert, to cities reminiscent of both LA and Tokyo, introducing them to a diverse cast of characters along the way, including Chinese and Japanese folk, Russians, Americans, Indians, Native Americans, and Africans. And, like, as representation goes, you can definitely tell he liked Kimba the White Lion and Superman when he was a kid, but it would be crass to dwell on that in a celebration of Toriyama's memory, especially considering how beloved his work is by people from all walks of life. The excellent Twitter cartoonist and
Piccolo.
voice of Kenny from Beyblade.
Do y'all count Piccolo as black? Because I do.
House of Decline, once joked that Goku is an international language, and he really wasn't that far off the mark.
First off, yeah, let's go back. I ain't gonna cop. Piccolo. Like, tell me this man ain't black, bro. Tell me this man ain't black. Tell me this man ain't black, bro. Tell me this man ain't black, bro. Tell me this man ain't black. Look at him. He got the Dewey. He got the Dewey on. He got the Dewey. Look, bro. Look, bro. Tell me he not black though. Tell me he not black though. Yeah. Tell me you're not black though, bro. You can't. You can't. He's literally black. Come on, bro. You say he green? You're racist as shit. You racist ass nigga. You racist ass nigga. The fuck? Oh, this is a 10-minute power fight.
Even Toriyama's depictions of gods and the afterlife, though they draw most heavily from Buddhist traditions, blend aspects of various world religions and his own very quirky sense of humor to create something that doesn't feel of any one culture so much as it feels like Dragon Ball. And regardless of how they feel about any given religion or philosophy, pretty much everyone likes Dragon Ball. Though many don't like, or at least respect it nearly enough. Nowadays, it's a common sentiment that DBZ's a victim of Seinfeld isn't funny syndrome. Many a weeb has said, yeah, it was good for the time, but by modern standards, it's nothing special. With all due respect to all those weebs, they could not be more wrong. While the series it went on to inspire undeniably added many refinements.
I rewatched Dragon Ball Z lately, like the Android little like the semi-perfect cell shit, bro. That shit was peak, bro, and that's not even the best parts of the series.
And cut fat away from the template Dragon Ball laid out. Few manga have ever done the whole martial arts adventure thing better.
Fuck out of here.
I emphasize manga because that version doesn't suffer from the many problems inherent to weekly adaptations that really hold the anime back. I read it for the first time just a few years ago when the Jump app dropped, after having watched the anime all the way through twice over and played through its story several more times over in game form, and I was blown away by how effortlessly fun it is to read. Even if you've heard the story 1,000 times over before, no one tells it like Toriyama himself.
Yeah. This is why I stopped shopping on Amazon, and you should too. Don't spend another dime on Amazon.
Your eyes just glide over the page, and it always feels like the art's moving right along with them. Conversational scenes strike a great balance between text and artwork, with at most 3 bubbles per panel before the characters move on in their stage business. And in the action scenes, the dialogue's cut down to a minimum, with art and sound effects alone often being used to both direct the eye and convey every detail of the choreography. The rare dialogue bubbles we do see serving as anchor points where your eyes can pause before the next flurry of fists begins. The mastery of paneling that Toriyama already demonstrated with
See, I'm sucked into the paneling already. I'm not even talking to y'all. Shit, I'm locked in.
One of Dr. Slump has been honed here.
On the shit. You say I'm dick eating? Nigga, eat my dick. How about that, bro?
After over 200 straight weeks of practice, to a downright godly level of skill, which he leveraged with a much more fluid art style that gradually evolved as Goku grew up, from a sleeker take on the chibis of Dr. Slump to, well, basically the foundation of the entire modern shonen aesthetic. A compromise between the clean, cartoony style of his own work and the cool, gritty, mature aesthetic of Fist of the North Star and JoJo. Though that compromise did have trade-offs, and the smaller version of Goku's design does still lend itself a lot better to animation, as the upcoming Dragon Ball Daima beautifully demonstrates. That's also a big part of why they turned him back into a kid when the animators took over for Dragon Ball GT, which I guess you could argue influenced anime too by being the first Boruto. But regardless, countless modern sports, battle, and adventure manga have adopted styles similar to what we see in DBZ. And even with all of that competition, Dragon Ball's art and layouts still look the cleanest of anything I've ever read, except maybe Bleach. That said, Dragon Ball does undeniably have some issues with pacing, foreshadowing that goes nowhere, and plot points that come out of nowhere, owing largely to how Toriyama made the whole thing up as he went along. There aren't a lot of those issues because he was really good at making shit up as he went along, but more thorough story planning was nonetheless one of the biggest ways that the series he inspired, from Yu Yu Hakusho to the Big Three, improved on the core shonen martial arts concept. But in doing their planning, they all borrowed from his work and codified the shit he made up into genre tropes, some of which the vast majority of mangaka were nowhere near funny enough to pull off, though that didn't stop them from trying. Dragon Ball's impact on the shonen landscape was immediate and massive. Even Masami Kurumada, who pioneered a lot of non-supernatural battle manga tropes with his seminal boxing series Ring ni Kakero, drew heavy inspiration from Dragon Ball and Fist of the North Star, as well as the then burgeoning magical girl genre, to create Saint Seiya, which in turn inspired many more magical boy manga like Bleach and Chainsaw Man. And that's just one of the countless evolutionary branches we can trace back to this one manga. Last summer, I made a video about how Akira Toriyama influenced and inspired just the power systems of the next 4 decades of battle manga, ignoring all other tropes and story patterns derived from his work, and it came out to 51 minutes long. So obviously it would take a lot longer than the rest of that timestamp to unpack all the ways he changed the shonen game, but for now you can go watch that to get some idea. Oh, but don't click away to watch it just yet though, because we still have to talk about how Dragon Ball defined an entire genre of video games. No, I didn't flub that line. I'm not talking about Dragon Quest. Toriyama's art for that series and others did have a pretty sizable impact on how game art and graphics evolved in Japan, but he was no game designer. The genre-defining gameplay loops and narrative tropes of Dragon Quest and Chrono Trigger were not his creations, but a certain other genre was defined by tropes that he created, which a certain other game strove to emulate, namely fighting games. Of course, other martial arts manga and movies were equally influential in the birth of that genre, but it's no coincidence that the most iconic move of the most iconic character of the most iconic classic fighting game is a Dragon Ball reference. Press quarter circle punch to pay respects. The goal of Street Fighter II and games like it was very explicit: to take all the badass shonen anime and kung fu movie stuff kids loved from the TV and let you actually do it to your friends. So naturally, the Dragon Ball license fit the emerging genre like a glove. The 4th, 5th, and 6th generation of consoles would all see multiple fighting games based on various eras of Dragon Ball. Some pretty legendary, like Super Butoden, some legendarily bad, like GT Final Bout.
Dragon, rock the dragon, Dragon Ball. Dragon, rock the dragon, come get me.
Fun fact, that game's the first time I heard that song. The Budokai series on PS2 was arguably the most exceptional of the classic DBZ fighting games, with a decently balanced combat system on top of substantial single-player content. A fighting game fan could hardly ask for a more generous package besides like Soul Calibur 2. And for DBZ fans, the Budokai game's what-if scenarios were some of the first original official content we'd gotten since Toriyama hung up the fountain pen in '95. But even as good as the Budokai games were, something always felt like it was missing from them. The Street Fighter style of gameplay was a fine enough format to capture the look of Dragon Ball Z fights in 2D, but with the characters now rendered in, for the time, very impressive 3D, it felt needlessly restrictive to lock all that crazy aerial laser beam combat to a single plane. So Spike Chunsoft got to work crafting a new type of free-flying 3D fighting game that would finally allow players to, if you'll pardon my game journalist, feel like Goku. Dragon Ball Z Sparking, known as DBZ Budokai Tenkaichi in the West, was the first ever anime arena fighter. Not to be confused with arena fighters like Power Stone, even though a few of those were based on anime, like One Piece, Rave Master, Bleach, and Shrek. In contrast to those top-down, more
they had a fucking Shrek fighting game, my nigga? The fuck?
arcadey titles, anime arena fighters put the player right in the cinematic action, dropping the camera down behind their Goku of Choice's back and mapping all of his iconic moves to simple inputs. And when I say choice of Goku, I'm not doing my usual glib thing about how, you know, all shonen protagonists and a lot of shonen characters are basically different flavors of Goku. I mean, in Tenkaichi 1 specifically, there are 7 different versions of Goku in the character roster. And by Tenkaichi 3, it's like 13. But that was all in service of the game's aim to let players easily recreate basically every iconic fight throughout the entire anime from the fighter select menu. Also, in the spirit of that, the game was very much balanced for lore accuracy over competitive viability, something the series wouldn't achieve until the still beloved Tenkaichi 3. It's so easy to map the formula to different franchises that nowadays it kind of feels like, aside from all the Dynasty Warriors clones, that's the only sort of anime game that ever gets made, which has created some stigma around arena fighters that really isn't helped by things like Jump All-Stars and Jujutsu Kaisen Cursed Clash being obviously unfinished, barely playable abominations. But you can't really blame all that on Tenkaichi, and most fans seem genuinely hyped for the series' imminent return as Dragon Ball Sparking Zero.
I'll be playing Sparking Zero on my Twitch. Go follow me.
DBZ is also presently represented by one of the tightest 2D fighters on the market, Dragon Ball FighterZ from Arc System Works, a game that uses all of the impressive animation techniques that the studio developed for their BlazBlue and Guilty Gear series to look pretty much exactly like the anime. Like you and your buddy are choreographing an episode in real time, which is a little different from actually being in the anime, but if you want that and can't wait for Sparking Zero, there's always Dragon Ball Kakarot, a single-player open-world action RPG with Tenkaichi-esque combat and a mini-game based on that episode where they go to get their driver's license, which is just the best thing ever, that retells the entire story from Z onward, demonstrating, if nothing else, how far graphics have come toward the very specific goal of remaking Chala Head Chala. Advancements that were driven in no small part by licensed games based on Dragon Ball or anime inspired by Dragon Ball, and original Japanese games seeking to emulate the look and feel of those very same anime. Eventually, the techniques they developed for those games would make their way back into anime, as model swapping and frame skipping unlocked the secrets of making 3D characters in 2D environments not look like complete ass. The same year Dragon Ball FighterZ dropped, Dragon Ball Super Broly featured fully 3D fight scenes that could have easily been ripped straight from an Arc Sys game. In fact, the editor cut partway through that scene to Broly's dramatic finish from FighterZ, and you didn't even notice. On the subject of the new Dragon Ball movies, most folks know the story of how Hollywood's Dragon Ball Evolution was so terrible and embarrassing that it inspired Toriyama to come out of retirement and make something better with the franchise. But what you might not know is that Funimation's short domestic run for Battle of the Gods was one of their first real theatrical success stories, and directly paved the way for more shonen tie-in films based on the likes of Hiroaka and One Piece to get wider stateside releases, which in turn laid the groundwork for the shocking blockbuster success of the movie Kimetsu no Yaiba Demon Slayer Mugen Train. Even if he wasn't the face of shonen anymore, Akira Toriyama was still making waves in the modern era and still making more Dragon Ball with his own two hands, despite his stated desire to pull back and relax a bit. Dragon Ball Daima was supposed to just be a silly little spin-off thing without any direct involvement from him, but then when he went to sign off on it, he accidentally did a whole bunch of character design and world building work and also wrote most of the plot. So now we have quite possibly the most authentic original Dragon Ball TV show in decades to look forward to, on top of all the gorgeous animation enabled by its little guys who go around school of character design. Plus there's that sick looking Sandland game, and hopefully at least a few other things that he wasn't quite ready to announce yet, because I don't know about you, but I'm not quite ready to say goodbye yet. That may sound contradictory given what I said in Let Goku Die almost exactly a year ago. But it just feels wrong for Toriyama-sama to be gone so soon.
Yeah,
he was only 68. Hayao Miyazaki barely retired twice by that age. And Stan Lee hadn't even started making anime yet. Legends like Toriyama should stick around to pass their wisdom on and shit, right? He wasn't even done making awesome manga. He never really stopped, just slowed down a little once Dragon Ball was done. It's just not fair. But what's really not fair is the fact that Toriyama didn't actually die all that young, relatively speaking. In fact, a Japanese blogger crunched the numbers, and it turns out he beat the average life expectancy for men in his profession by 6 years. Most mangaka don't make it past 62. And for reference, the average life expectancy...
No, that is insane, bro. What the fuck? 62? Like, nigga, what? Like, what, my nigga? 62. That is young, bro. If you die at 60, anywhere in the 60s, bro, that is a young, like, time to be, like, passing away due to health, bro. I feel like your health shouldn't be dying down until you're maybe high 80s, bro. That is crazy. That's crazy.
Of men in Japan, a country that, by the way, has a word for when you work so hard you die, is 83. The toll that making manga takes on the bodies that make it really can't be overstated. They work grueling hours to hit brutal deadlines, and even though publishers have gotten at least a little better at easing up on the schedule, many still destroy themselves for their work, driven by passion as much as hunger, dreaming that they might one day tell a story that reaches the entire world, like Akira Toriyama, who left us far too soon, and yet will stay with us for as long as mankind loves manga and anime. And who none of us really have to say goodbye to just yet, because he left so many differently amazing works behind. No matter your tastes or interests, I guarantee there's something with his fingerprints all over it that you haven't taken the time to appreciate yet, and you will totally love. So go read Sandland to get hyped for that game, or go get to finally playing Dragon Quest and get cultured, or play Blue Dragon if you're already cultured, or Toe Ball. Toe Ball's great. Or do what I'm doing and finally give Dr. Slump a shot. I don't recommend binging it personally, though. Comedy of that caliber really deserves to be savored. And all of Akira Toriyama's work deserves to be remembered. Even the all of Akira Toriyama's work deserves to be remembered. Even the stuff that didn't change the world. So I hope this pushes more people to seek it out. I'm just one fan among legions, saying thank you for changing my world.
That was fire. Fire video. Round of applause, man. Round of applause. Fire video. R.I.P.